Hello, my name is Mark Lyons, and I'm Vice President for Disciplined Agile at PMI. Uh, I'm going to provide a short overview of what Disciplined Agile is all about. In Disciplined Agile goes back to 2009 when Scott Ambler was the Chief Methodologist of Agile and Lean for IBM worldwide. And it was during that time that he worked with Mark Lyons to come up with the first official version of Disciplined Agile, which became the first book, which came out in 2012, called Disciplined Agile Delivery. Since then, Disciplined Agile has become the second leading enterprise agile framework in the world behind this, what you may have heard of from Scaled Agile, something called the Scaled Agile Framework, or SAFe for short. Unlike SAFe, which is designed primarily for extremely large programs with dozens of teams building one particular solution, SAFe is far more, I should say DAD is far more flexible. It can work on very large programs, absolutely, but it can also be used on one team of 4 people doing Scrum. It's very flexible, very adaptable for any kind of project, any kind of team, any kind of organization. In August of 2019, PMI acquired Disciplined Agile, and Mark and Scott are now part of Disciplined Agile brand within PMI. I want to start with a definition of Disciplined Agile, and I'll just read this. Disciplined Agile is a process decision toolkit that provides straightforward guidance to help people, teams, and organizations to streamline their processes in a context-sensitive manner. DA provides a solid foundation for business agility by showing how the various activities, such as solution delivery, IT operations, enterprise architecture, portfolio management, security, finance, procurement, and many others work together. DA also describes what these activities should address, provides a range of options for doing so, and describes the trade-offs associated with each option. So we call Disciplined Agile a toolkit of ideas to help customize the way of working your Agile in a way that makes sense for you. And successful organizations take responsibility for their evolving their own agility. You can't buy it. There's no silver bullet. What you can do is, start with something like Scrum or SAFe. We say success doesn't come from adopting a prescriptive framework or methodology such as Scrum or SAFe, but it could be a good place to start. Certainly, picking a method or a framework can accelerate your first adoption of Disciplined Agile, but you're following often prescriptive advice, and you probably want to customize it for your unique situation. So for true business agility, we need to actually choose our Agile way of working, a bespoke, tailored Agile, optimizing for our unique situations. What you see here is a view of the latest book, Choose Your Way of Working, Choose Your WOW, that Mark and Scott wrote. And it essentially is a rewrite or second edition of the first book, Disciplined Agile Delivery. And it's considered the DA body of knowledge for Disciplined Agile Delivery. Now, I should say about customizing your way of working, sometimes you may have heard of a company called Spotify, or the Spotify model, or the Spotify framework. And people like to say that's what we use. What I'd encourage you to consider is that Spotify was designed for a particular situation, a particular company and context. That is to say, a Swedish online music company. And Spotify has some great ideas on Agile, but many of them probably don't suit what you do. In fact, Spotify will tell you that since people started using their model, they have changed their way of working considerably. What is really good about Spotify is not copying what they did, but the fact that they actually created their own way of working based on their situation. So what we recommend is don't try to copy Spotify, although they may have some great ideas that you want to use, but you really should focus on creating a version of Spotify that makes sense for you, evolving your own way of working. The 7 principles of Disciplined Agile. At the heart of it, obviously, we want to delight customers. We want to be awesome. We want to enjoy the way of working using Agile. Agile should be fun. We are pragmatic. Disciplined Agile is not purist. For instance, you might hear that everybody needs to be working co-located in the same room. Well, experience shows that actually that's more the exception than the rule these days. Often teams are distributed globally, or at minimum, you might have some people with work at home arrangements. So, what Discipline Agile tells us is how we can be as agile as we can possibly be given the realities of our situation. So, it's pragmatic. Discipline Agile believes that context counts. The way one company does Agile will be significantly different than the way another company. And even within one company, there's no one standard Agile methodology, if you will, that will work for a particular company. Because inside a company, you can have small projects, large projects, package implementation, projects that don't even use IT. So the way you do it will need to adjust to context counts. And choice is good. Rather than saying Scrum is the right way to do things, or Lean is the right way, or Safe is the right way, or Spotify, you will probably want to use a variety of approaches. And it's good to not be locked into one particular method. It's good to have choice in different approaches. We talk about optimizing flow. That means that we should look for ways, we should consider not just individual teams, but an organization has sets of teams, and they also have supporting groups such as enterprise architecture to work with. So what we want to do is optimize the flow of value to our stakeholders and consider the whole organization as a system, and optimize that system, not just individual teams. And we also recognize in Discipline Agile that it's about an enterprise. We need to be enterprise aware and know that things are going on outside our team, and make sure that we're all going in the same direction. We understand how to collaborate together, that we're using common standards and guidelines because we are an enterprise. We're not one individual team. Some people ask about, since the acquisition of Discipline Agile, whether it's going to be integrated with PMI's PMBOK guide. And the answer is no, because the classic project management guidance that we learn about for our PMI is wonderful for its context and for its need. On the Agile side, there are some situations where some of the classic project management techniques may not make sense in a more Agile environment. So these bodies of knowledge fulfill two separate but complementary needs. There is some overlap between the two bodies of knowledge. The new PMBOK guide that's being produced is going to include more Agile and hybrid content. And the Discipline Agile side, we've always had some stuff that comes from the PMBOK guide related to risk management as well as governance. So in this Venn diagram, there's a bit of overlap between the content, but certainly they are different things for different purposes. Now let's look at the way that DA is structured. It's described in 4 views. At the heart of it, at the base, is this Agile mindset, principles and guidelines based on the Agile Manifesto. And incidentally, within Disciplined Agile, we've amended and updated the Agile Manifesto to reflect what's happened since 2001 when the manifesto was written. Certainly, we've learned a lot from it, and there's certainly a lot of things have changed. So that's one thing you might want to look into, is the DA Manifesto, Agile Manifesto. The content is also structured around people with roles and responsibilities. We talk about different kinds of team structures. The flow is described with life cycles, and we also depict workflows to show how information flows between different groups. And practices, there's a rich library of practices, well organized, so that you can find techniques that can help you to become better. And we organize that content in things called gold diagrams. In terms of the people side of things, I'll just quickly show that we have a team lead, which you can call an Agile project manager, a Scrum master. You don't have to use the team lead. It's important to understand that these roles are not job titles, they are roles. So what you call them in your organization might be different. And we have a product owner, just like Scrum does. Something that's unique to Discipline Agile is this idea of an architecture owner. Now, architecture owner is just like any other developer. They are a developer, they write code, but they have additional responsibilities of what Scott and Mark like to call making sure that the team exhibits good technical behavior. And what this means is that there's one person on the team that ensures that whatever the corporate architecture and development guidelines are, that they're being followed, whether that's doing code reviews, certain types of documentation, good quality code, low defect rate, those kinds of things. That's why we have an architecture owner role. Then we also have the team members, just like Scrum does. And we have this role called, or DA has a role called stakeholder, which is a little bit more than a customer, because it's not just customers we're dealing with here. There are other stakeholder groups like sponsors, operations folks, support staffs, database groups, finance, etc. So our definition of customer is a little bit more robust. We call it stakeholder. And Disciplined Agile is an agnostic hybrid that leverages strategies from a variety of sources. And Disciplined Agile didn't try to reinvent the wheel. We took good ideas from traditional and agile methods and brought them together into one unified body of knowledge, so that you don't have to read the 100 books. We've done the heavy lifting, and we've removed the duplication, and we filled in the gaps. So it is agnostic, and it is kind of the best of the practices that are out there. I should say there's no best practice, by the way. Because there'll be some situation where what you think is the best practice actually isn't. But there are very good practices, and we look for practices that are best in a particular context. Now, your team interacts with others, and they need to become agile too. This hex in the middle depicts a typical agile or Scrum team. And that team is going to need to work with other teams. This is part of the enterprise awareness to get the job done. Agile likes to say we have whole teams that have all the people and skills required to get the job done. But in reality, in an enterprise, any team is going to have to work with other teams, and they're going to have to work with other areas that you see here. And these hexes that you see here, this is how the content is structured in Disciplined Agile into these things we call process blades. It's a fancy term for maybe just an area wherein behind this area, we provide the guidance and the practices to help you be more agile. And putting those process blades together, we see that what we sometimes affectionately call the square onion of Disciplined Agile. And at its base is Disciplined Agile delivery, excuse me, that has a selection of different life cycles, different approaches, of which Scrum is one. Scrum is what the Agile Lifecycle is. It's more than just, it's not called the Scrum Lifecycle because it's more than Scrum. It's got some technical practices from things like extreme programming. It's got some Agile data ideas, Agile modeling ideas, and some governance. So collectively, all that stuff is Agile. And the common thing about it is that it has iterations or sprints. But at the bottom here, you see a selection of different approaches or life cycles. Then we have some guidance around disciplined DevOps, and moving up, we have disciplined Agile IT. And then at the top, we've got disciplined Agile Enterprise. So this is the beautiful thing about disciplined Agile, is that it's about business agility. It's about enterprise agility. And the fact that all these process blades themselves need to be agile if the entire business is going to be agile. We want the areas that support our teams, or work with our teams, to be enablers to corporate agility, not impediments, which is what we often see in organizations. So behind each of these process blades, there are lots of practices. Let's take one, for example, data management. Behind the data management process blade is a goal diagram. And this goal diagram for data management shows that we have the yellow rectangles depict what we call decision points. And for these different decision points, we may need to make some decisions about what practices we think are most appropriate for a situation. And that's what you see on the right-hand side. They're practices or strategies. Each one of those has guidance behind how you actually do these things. If you see bold italicized, it means that the items are good places to start. They're like default choices you might want to start with. If you see an arrow beside the list of choices, it means that it's an ordered list, and that the ones at the top of the list are generally better than the ones at the bottom. I say generally better because context counts. It's not always the situation. But this gives you some guidance as to which of the practices you might want to get better at and move towards. To give you a specific example, there's another goal called Explore Scope. And Agile teaches us to use user stories. And you can see user stories here in this list. On the second decision point from the top, Explore Usage, you'll see on the right-hand side near the bottom of the list, you'll see user story. So yes, Basic Agile teaches us to use user stories as a way to depict requirements in an agile way. But what we find over and over again is that people will need other requirements models to help properly communicate what the requirements are. And an issue a lot of teams have is they don't know what their options are. They haven't read the 100 books and they don't know what to use to supplement their stories. And you're not going to learn that at a typical Agile course. This is where Discipline Agile Toolkit can help you up your game, help you to be more effective by teaching you other techniques to supplement what you learn in the basic Agile course. I'll give you an example. One would be a persona. Persona is an interesting technique to help you understand your users, your stakeholders, your customers, and how they would use your system and how they work. And by learning and having empathy for them, you can design a better user experience. So this is a technique that's really good to supplement your user stories. And in the Choose Your Wow, the body of knowledge, there are tables for these things that provide a definition of what each of the options are, as well as the trade-offs where they might or might not make sense, so that you can make better decisions for your context to help you be more successful. Now, teams should choose an appropriate life cycle for their situation. As I've said, and you saw in the square onion, these are the DAD life cycles, 6 life cycles. And there are agile approach and a lean approach. And in many, if not most cases, the agile scrum approach would be the way to go. But in many situations, actually, such as a maintenance team or a situation where requirements are changing continuously, then a lean or priorities are changing continuously. A lean approach might be a better effective way of working. So this goes back to choice is good and context counts. We're agnostic. Pick the one that makes sense for you. Don't have time to go through all of them, but we'll go through just a few. The basic one is the Agile Lifecycle. If you know Scrum, you recognize this diagram. The piece in the middle is the Scrum diagram. What we recognize in Enterprise Agile and being pragmatic is that while Scrum doesn't tell you how to put together a backlog, or what DA calls a work item list, you might want to spend some time up front putting together your stories and coming up with a common vision for what you're going to deliver. This is a project-based life cycle where it has a beginning and you put together a team and you build something and you go through the construction phase, building out some functionality. And then if you need it, you have a transition phase to actually move it into production. And you may roll into another release or you may shut down the project. And a lot of people say that there's no projects anymore, it's all product. But that's not really true. There are certainly lots of situations where you will maybe bring in a consultant team to build something else and then disband the team. So context counts. Certainly we'd like to move towards a product mentality, but there's still a place for projects. And the phases that you see at the bottom, you do not have to have them. If you don't need an inception, then don't use it. If you don't need a transition, then don't use it. But they're there if you need to. It's nice to have the choice. Another one we'll talk about is continuous delivery, the lean life cycle. This is unlike Scrum or iteration or sprint-based approach. Lean uses a concept called pools, and we pull work items as we have the capacity to deliver them. And it's more about flow. And this is one of the more advanced life cycles, and a company like Amazon would do this, where they're delivering functionality many times per day. And if that's your situation, that's certainly something you should strive for. There's a life cycle if that makes sense for you. There's also something new in Discipline Agile is there is a business service team life cycle. And what this is for non-IT situations. It uses a lean approach, and you could imagine a Kanban board with sticky notes, and you group things into different swim lanes, and you pull work across as you have the ability to do it. You could have your daily stand-ups around your sticky notes, your Kanban board. And a good example might be a marketing marketing department that wants to plan a marketing campaign and plan their work and deliver it. This would be a perfect life cycle for your marketing department to do their work in an agile way. Recently, PMI, subsequent to the acquisition of Disciplined Agile by PMI, they also acquired something called Flex from a gentleman named Al Shalloway from his company called Net Objectives. And Al comes from a safe background, and he developed something that can help you get better in situations where you're scaling, you're using scaling frameworks like SAFe. And he helps streamline and accelerate value delivery of SAFe and other scaling approaches. And PMI and DI really like the diagram that he shows to show the emphasis on, rather than a hierarchical approach, more top down, more of a value stream approach and flowing value to our customers. And this is the kind of diagram that DA has been looking for a long time. And so we're in the process, PMI is in the process of integrating the DA content and the Flex content. And this will be sort of the high level diagram for disciplined Agile. And what's really brilliant about this diagram in disciplined Agile is that we can look at these different components of a value stream and get better at them and remove the bottlenecks by utilizing some of the techniques from the disciplined Agile toolkit. So the two of them go really well together. Also built into disciplined Agile, as I mentioned, is governance. And a lot of Agile people say you don't need governance because we're different, and that's just simply not true. If any Agile project, if you're given money from your stakeholders, we have a responsibility to report back to them the status and the health of the project, what its risk level is, and whether we're still on schedule. And so what Disciplined Agile has is points in time that it makes sense to at least have a discussion, if not a meeting, to describe how we're doing and to keep our stakeholders informed. So it's lightweight milestones, lightweight governance, and what some people call lean governance built right into DA. Let's talk a little bit about what DA calls guided continuous improvement. This is a classic continuous improvement loop where we identify a problem, identify a solution, we try the solution out, we assess whether it's effective, we adopt it if it works, and if it doesn't, we abandon it, and then we share the learnings. And this is good, but with guided continuous improvement, we can do better. Some experiments, trying a new experiment to fix a problem, what Agile calls fail fast. Well, some experiments fail. You'll learn something, but it's still a failure. And failing fast is fine, but succeeding early would be better, wouldn't it? Failing fast can be a time-consuming and expensive process. If we get better at identifying what our potential solutions are, then we can succeed more often and we can improve faster. We can do this if we have access to an experienced Agile coach, but they are expensive and they're hard to find. We could be better at this if we have access to a process knowledge base like the Disciplined Agile Toolkit. And so going back for a second, this is part of the real value proposition of Disciplined Agile, is because you can refer to proven strategies that work in similar contexts for you. You don't have to experiment and fail fast and learn on your own. You can get better faster, which is definitely a good thing. This is a typical J curve and shows that if you're adopting a method or a framework like Scrum, often there'll be some time and your productivity actually goes down as you learn the new method or framework, and then you get better, I would hope so. It tends to level off. Once you're doing everything that the method has told you to do or the framework has told you to do, your productivity tends to level off. But you can do better. And you can do classic continuous improvement that will help you get better. You can refer to guided continuous improvement, and that can accelerate your learning and really accelerate your process improvement. And one of the messages here is that Disciplined Agile does not need to be disruptive, whereas other methods sometimes force you to upset the apple cart and change everything, start over again. With Disciplined Agile, you can do whatever you're doing currently and incrementally improve. Start where you are and try to get better. So in summary, Disciplined Agile is a rich, comprehensive, and well-organized toolkit of strategies to help your organization be more successful with Agile. It brings a disciplined, agnostic, professional, enterprise approach to Agile, which is what our industry has been lacking in the past. Understanding what your options are and which ones work in different contexts leads to better decisions. And better decisions lead to better outcomes. All right, so that's a very quick overview. There's a lot in Disciplined Agile. We've just scratched the surface here, but hopefully this gives you an idea of what it's all about and why it's an agnostic and valuable tool to help you get better. Having it stewarded by PMI that takes such a professional approach to project management and can dovetail with the professionalism of the Discipline Agile program, we think is a brilliant fit. And the excitement around Discipline Agile certainly is growing. Just a note on the certification program. The vision of the DA certification program is to create the world's most respected, comprehensive, credible, and worthwhile Agile membership and certification body in the world, to enable organizations and community members to maximize their enterprise agility potential. And how to find out more? To find training and more information on DA membership and certification, all this information you can find at the disciplinedagileconsortium.org website. PMI and Discipline Agile are looking to integrate the websites, but for now, this would be the place to go. And you can sign up for a free newsletter. If you want to access the monthly webinars as well as previous webinars, you would need to get a membership. And currently, while there are plans to integrate the memberships, currently they are separate, and a DA membership costs $50 per year. So you might want to look into doing that. And on that website, by the way, you will be able to find training in your local area, as well as virtual training options, so that you can move into the certification program. And I should have said this earlier, but certainly many of you might have questions about the ACP program, the PMI ACP, and what's happening to it. Well, Mark assures me that it's not going away. At least that is not the plan. And in any case, if you decide to pursue Discipline Agile certification, you will get credit for your experience in education on the ACP side, so that you'll be able to be on an accelerated certification path within Disciplined Agile. Don't worry about that. All right, so that concludes this presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.